what had happened was that Islam had worked. Things had changed in the Arabian Peninsula, and people found that the old paganism no longer spoke to their new conditions, and the Arabs are deeply practical people, and they felt that this was the way to go forward. They then began to invade the surrounding territories. Now, it's important. Western people have a wrong idea of this. People often assume that they were impelled by the ferocious power of Islam to pour out into the neighboring countries and convert all the people at sword point. Nothing is further from the truth. The Arabs for centuries had been breaking out of the deserts of Arabia into the settled lands, but this time they met a power vacuum. The great empires of Byzantium and Persia had been locked for ages in a very debilitating struggle. They were worn out, and many of the populace were disaffected on both sides, and the Arabs came in, and soon they had created a vast empire, and were beginning to had entered history. And this astonishing success and astonishing reversal seemed to endorse the fact that Muhammad had indeed been a prophet of God.
What would you say is the fundamental message of the Quran?
The basic message of the Quran is that it is wrong to build up a private fortune, and good to share your wealth as equally as possible, and to build a just and decent society where poor and vulnerable people are treated with respect. The Quran is not interested in theology. It doesn't have a sort of strong doctrinal emphasis. Rather, like as in Judaism, what you must is how you behave. That's important, and the Quran and Muslims have to observe 5 basic practices, the 5 pillars of Islam.
What are those?
Well, first of all, you have to proclaim your faith in the unity of God and the prophethood of Muhammad. Then you have to give a portion of your income every year in alms to the poor. You must fast during Ramadan, and one of the many reasons for this, is that every Muslim then will know in his or her gut what it is to be hungry during the day, and learn how it is for poor people who can't eat whenever they choose. If your circumstances permit, you must make the Hajj pilgrimage to Mecca, and that is a sort of peak experience, a religious experience of a Muslim's life. People who've been able to do it. It is very much, it expresses the Islamic experience. Muslims put on a sort of uniform white garment to emphasize the unity of the community, and that to wipe out discrepancies between rich people and poor people, and the rights do yield mysterious rights, very, very ancient, pre-Islamic, do yield a profound religious experience of the divine and of community. Then Muslims must pray 5 times a day. This was the first thing Muhammad made his converts do, facing Jerusalem at that time, because he wanted them to worship the God of the Jews and the Christians. And this was hard for the Bedouin Arabs, who didn't approve of kingship and thought it degrading to grovel on the ground like a slave. But by the purpose of it is to orient yourself towards God, whatever you happen to be doing at certain moments of the day. And orientation means all kinds of spiritual things too. But then the posture of your body teaches you at a level that's deeper than the rational about the essential act of surrender of your entire being, which is Islam.
The way that most Americans these days hear about Islam is great controversies involving Islamic fundamentalists. What is the state of Islamic fundamentalism today?
Well, it's important to say at the outset that it's not only Islam which has produced fundamentalism. Fundamentalism is a reaction to Western modernity, and it's erupted in every single major faith, including Christianity and Judaism. Islamic fundamentalism is... it's a complex phenomenon. Every movement is distinct, but basically Muslims, like other fundamentalists, do not want to have their countries secularized on the Western model, and they're fighting to put God back onto center stage. Every fundamentalist movement I've studied, including Islam, is rooted in fear, a profound terror that liberal secular society is going to wipe out faith. It's true even in Protestant fundamentalism in the United States. And when people are frightened like this, and they feel their backs are to the wall and they're fighting for survival, they often lash out like wounded beasts and become violent. And this has certainly happened in Islam. I think, like all fundamentalism runs a danger, and Islam fundamentalism certainly incurs this, that in their struggle to survive, they tend to stress the more militant aspects of the faith and let go, overlook those that preach more compassion and tolerance and brotherly love.
For instance, there's an article in the Washington Post this morning about the visit by a UN official to Afghanistan, where she protested the treatment of women there by the Taliban. The ruling party bars most girls from going to school, most women from working, requires most women to be completely veiled in public. Is this how does this reflect on in terms of the history of Islam? Is this a traditional treatment of women?
No. And the Prophet himself actually had a very good view of women, as I've said, and the emancipation of women was dear to his heart. And in the Quran, women are given rights of inheritance and divorce that we wouldn't have ourselves until the 19th century. There's nothing in the Quran about veiling all women or secluding them in various parts of the house. That came in after the Prophet's death. But the issue of women, and I quite agree, the Taliban are sort of very retroactive here. The issue of women has become a sore point in every fundamentalist movement, including Christianity. First, secularism, which has been liberating for us. I love living in a secular society, but it has been experienced as very aggressive in the Islamic world because modernization has been so rapid, far more accelerated than it for. It's often the secularization, it seems brutal. The Shahs of Iran used to have their women, their soldiers, go through the streets of Tehran with their bayonets out, taking off the women's veils and ripping them to pieces in front of them. On one occasion, the Shah gave his soldiers orders to shoot at unarmed demonstrators in one of the holiest shrines of Iran who were peacefully protesting against obligatory Western dress. Some of the worst forms of Sunni fundamentalism developed in the concentration camps into which President Nasser had interred members of the Muslim Brotherhood without trial. Many of them had done nothing more incriminating than handing out leaflets or attending a meeting. Now, in this kind of atmosphere, you can see that secularism seems a bad thing.
Let's talk now to Bill. He's calling us from New York City. Hi, Bill.
Hi, thank you. A quick question for you about the issue of mercy and compassion in Islam. I read the Quran when I was young to try to understand the religion, and I got kind of saddened by the frequency of exhortations in that text of the Quran toward killing infidels, killing those who are not Islamic. My question to you is, what are the conflicts within the Quran itself on the issue of mercy versus killing infidels, and how has that been treated by Islamic scholarship through the ages?
Mercy and tolerance are very important in Islam. There is nothing in the Quran about infidels, nothing at all. In fact, Muslims are exhorted to respect the people of the book, people of who belong to a previous revelation. The Prophet never expected Christians or Jews to come into Islam unless they wished to do so because they'd received authentic revelations of their own. And constantly the Quran insists that Muhammad is not cancelling out the other prophets, people like Moses or Jesus or Abraham. He's coming to bring the religion of the one God to the Arabs who'd never had such a prophet from God before. And Muslim scholars today of much greater sort of learning than I will tell you that if Muhammad had heard about the Hindus or the Buddhists or the Native Americans or the Australian Aborigines, he would have praised their religious leaders too, because all rightly guided religion comes from God. Now, in fact, at first, conversion to Islam was not encouraged because it was thought that Islam was a religion for the Arabs, the sons of Ishmael, just as Judaism was a religion for the sons of Isaac and Jacob. and that Islam was an Arab faith, and it was just one of their scripture was in their own language. Conversion wasn't positively encouraged.